This review and the content it covers is intended for a wider teenage audience and should be suitable for most in this age group. However, it does contain references to suicide. Viewer discretion is advised. And there's no need to hide, this review is spoiler free. Every so often, I like to look ahead at next season's lineup of anime, pick a manga adaptation, and get familiar with the source material before the anime gets a chance to come out. I did this with Monster Musume last summer, and it blew me away. It was amazing to watch this little known series suddenly explode in popularity over the summer. So when I discovered Orange a few months ago, I got excited and immediately picked up the manga. Did I think it was worth my while, or was I just getting ahead of myself? One morning before going to school, Naho Takamiya receives a mysterious letter that claims to have come from herself 10 years in the future. As the things the letter predicts start to become true, she realises that it is not a prank. The letter warns her of specific regrets in her immediate future, and tells of a boy called Kakeru who transfers to her class that very same day. The biggest regret the letter foretells is that Kakeru is long since dead 10 years later, and begs for Naho to save him. As a story that takes place in the present day with time-travelling letters, your first worry should be how the letters themselves are explained. Well, you don't need to worry there. It's explained without destroying your suspension of disbelief, and while staying consistent with the already present themes of hope and the strength of regret. The existence of the letters might also make you worry that the solution to saving Kakeru will be as easy as following the instructions. But it's more complicated than that. At first, Naho thinks of the letter as nothing more than a prank. When she does realise that it's the real deal, she finds it easy to doubt the letters sometimes, and for good reason. After all, her future self failed to save Kakeru, so she can't possibly have all the answers. There are more reasons to doubt the letters that I'd class as spoilers, so I won't go any further, but they really are what breathe fresh life into this story. Another bold decision of this series is to occasionally flash forward 10 years and gradually tell the story of how the Naho of the future came to the decision to write the letters, which again works well by showing the full picture, allowing us to grasp at the same time the helplessness present Naho feels and the soul-crushing regret of Naho's group of friends 10 years later. These momentary jumps forward also help build a full emotional connection to the situation Naho finds herself in. We are allowed to sympathise for the group in the future as they continue to mourn Kakeru's untimely death even 10 years later, while at the same time we sympathise for Naho in the present, who is struggling to understand and save her close friend, burdened by the knowledge that Kakeru is on a path towards suicide. The story doesn't have many specific memorable events, and you could say that is a weakness. From the first sight of the colossal titan poking its head over Wall Maria in Attack on Titan, to Death Note's Yellow Box warehouse scene, iconography is important to not just manga, but fiction as a whole. It's not only what makes them memorable, but what makes people want to return to them and experience them over again. In Orange though, there just isn't any moment like that. There is the key scene that the rest of the series builds towards, and a few twists that keep things interesting in the meantime, but apart from that there aren't very many strong moments that stand on their own. Although I suppose this helps to make the climax hit that much harder in contrast to the warm tone of the rest of the series. And hit it does. Have a box of tissues on standby for that last chapter because it is sublime, with every facet of the series coming together perfectly. We'll begin with the protagonist, Naho Takamiya. As a character, she's pretty bland, a perfectly basic high school girl, but one who constantly worries about others. Because she's our window into the story, when she worries, we worry too. A good main character is also a relatable one, and relate to her we do. She often struggles to do what she ought to out of hesitation and embarrassment, which is a very human trait. Flaws are also essential in a relatable protagonist, and hers is that she sometimes buckles under the stress of saving Kakeru and the weight of having someone else's life in her hands. All of these elements combine into a character who balances the predictability of a letter telling the reader everything that's going to happen, with the hesitation and emotional vulnerability of any normal person, making her into a truly interesting protagonist. The triumph of this series is its central character, Kakeru, who is the most genuine portrayal of a person suffering from chronic depression I have ever seen. He smiles more often than anyone else, hiding how he really feels and bottling up all of his own stress. His past and his own regret haunts him more than anything, but he almost never mentions it, wallowing in self-loathing. We almost never get to see what's going on inside his head either, which makes Naho, and us by extension, worry about him even more. although he isn't a pathetic character either. He is Naho's objective, and as a result we end up valuing his fragile life just as much as she does. It's incredibly hard to talk about Kakeru without spoiling this manga, so let's move on to the supporting cast. Suwa is a secondary love interest for Naho who, in a future without Kakeru, married and had a family with her. As a result, he's the source of some interpersonal conflict but isn't necessarily a bad guy. He's a good source of support and encouragement for Naho. This series might have sounded depressing so far, but Hagita is the comic relief who lifts the mood somewhat. Although he doesn't do much besides, he is a very important character for making sure that it isn't all doom and gloom. The things he says and does as well are hilarious, even right up to the end. Although, the weakest of the supporting cast are Chino and Azu, who are so devoid of purpose in this story that I had to look up their names while writing this. I never even remembered Chino's name while I was reading Orange. It's almost as if they're exclusively there to trick you into thinking that Orange isn't a shoujo manga, because without them there the cast would be comprised of 3 guys and Nao. And although they do have that effect, they don't really do anything else at all except play along with the rest. When everyone is crying, they cry. When everyone is laughing, they laugh. And although a couple of unused characters who are just around doesn't take away from any of the other elements, it is distracting in hindsight. The artwork is crisp and clean, for a shoujo manga that is. I've noticed a lot of shoujo manga use blurry artwork and whimsy, which I never really liked. So to see Orange take an entirely different approach is refreshing. It also helps you to forget that this is a shoujo manga, which I feel is very important in immersing you in the story and the characters. Speaking of the characters, Ichigo Takano's artwork for the girls is gorgeous. Every female character looks so very distinctive and Naho's face is ridiculously cute. I realise she's doing the same thing with her mouth as Kristen Stewart does, but here the artist makes her lips look fuller and the position her mouth is in looks very natural. Although Takano isn't as talented at making the boys look distinctive. While Hagita, who never gets close-ups and wears glasses, is very different from the other boys, Suwa and Kakeru have extremely similar faces, especially when they smile. I feel like Takano might need to practice drawing distinctive male faces, although the faces on characters of either sex are always expressive, and this really pours emotion into each scene. And I don't quite know what it is, but it's very easy to tell the younger versions of the characters apart from their future selves, even though there's only a 10-year gap. You can recognise several different visual techniques like distinctive types of clothing, but besides this they genuinely look more mature. Overall the artwork is extremely good. It isn't masterclass, but it's clear and descriptive, perfect for a story so thick with emotion. Orange isn't perfect. It isn't a long manga, or an intense manga, or even an iconic manga. What Orange is a powerful, poignantly beautiful story, solid in its execution and captivating to the human heart. It carries with it a crucial message, told through a sensitive issue, handled masterfully. This isn't just a good manga, this is an important one. Important for anyone who has experience with crippling depression or suicide, and if you haven't, that's all the more reason to read it. If you haven't read Orange, then I strongly advise you to pick it up. All 5 volumes of Orange are available in English on Crunchyroll's manga app for premium members. It's also available in 2 omnibus formats with the short manga Haruhiro Astronaut thrown in as a bonus from 7 Seas Entertainment. Crunchyroll is also airing the anime adaptation this season, which I would highly recommend as it should cover the entire series. For alternate recommendations, I point you towards Princess Jellyfish. I'm not the biggest fan of shoujo manga, but Princess Jellyfish was easy to get into. There's more to it than your standard shoujo series. Or if you have a thing for tragedy, then I'd recommend Higurashi When They Cry. Although it's more of a horror than a romance, it will cover you on the tragedy front. Hopefully one of these will be to your liking. This short manga by the same creator comes included with the second omnibus of Orange. It follows Chiki and her twin sister Mami. Mami is constantly dumping and finding new boyfriends while Chiki is waiting for that special someone. That's when they meet Yuri, the school's Mr. Perfect who Mami promises to date for at least 2 weeks. Yuri's friend Natsuki and a gentle-minded delinquent Tatsuaki also introduce themselves to the twins. The story is boring and as basic as a shoujo gets, at first at least. It really picks up in chapter 4 and keeps you interested from then until the end. It initially comes off as a generic shoujo series but then takes a unique twist, championing the idea that the one for you isn't necessarily Mr. Tall, Dark and Handsome, but the love can come from unexpected places. Chiki is a girl who has never dated, while her sister Mami dates countless guys. They aren't characterised by these traits though, and instead reasons are given for why they've acted the way they have. Yuri is a bland of basic shoujo dude with nothing going on who just moves the plot forward when it needs a good shove. The same is true of Natsuki, who gets just a little more personality. Tatsuaki is where this manga shines, because while he's there for comic relief, it's him we end up rooting for, although at first we think he doesn't stand a chance compared to Yuri and Natsuki. The artwork is a lot sharper and more realistic than most shoujo manga, which like Orange makes it more accessible to a wider audience who are annoyed by the whimsy that manga like Vampire Knight and Nor and High School Host Club evoke. Although Chiki and Mami's identical appearances can be extremely confusing. We're supposed to tell the difference by the stripes on Chiki's clothing and the spots on Mami's, but the reliance on close-ups means that often their clothes are out of the panel and we can't tell who is who. Overall, this was pretty enjoyable for a short series. The art is appealing, the characters are likeable enough, and the outcome of the story is satisfying for all. I wouldn't tell anyone to pick up the second omnibus of Orange just to get it, but I'd say it's worth a read for any shoujo fan who happens to be picking up Orange anyway. I know I don't usually do this, but I'd like to give a shout out to the Samaritans. They're a UK based charity that runs a suicide hotline open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can get in touch with them for free by dialing 116 123 for the UK and Ireland. If you're having suicidal thoughts, or if you know someone who you think does, then don't hesitate to pick up the phone. This has been Scotaku. Remember to leave your thoughts down in the comments below, and until next time, cheerio.